guess they tried. Thought find out that every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's the founder of Rental Secrets, and I'm the author of the book Rental Secrets as well, and state consultant based in Dallas, Texas. None other than Mr. Justin Pogue.
Hey, happy to be here again.
Welcome back, Mr. Justin. And let's continue to talk about your latest book, Rental Secrets. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I
Yeah, so I have a 20-year background in residential property management and development, and it all started with my mother just asking me to let's just go look at one property. And that snowballed into a 20-year career. But it was an interesting process, actually working with and investing with one of my parents. And we can dive into some of the interesting ins and outs of that a little later in our discussion.
Certainly. And again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Justin. Thank you. So was there a specific light bulb moment, a frustrating rental experience, or a brilliant landlord, or a surprising conversation that made you think that has to be a book?
It was so I was in between property management roles, and somebody suggested that I write a book. I had no idea what that looked like, what the process was, how to even get started. Um, so I went to the bookstore and I got to the real estate section, and I'm looking at these books. And there are all kinds of real estate books for investors and real estate agents and property managers and people in real estate insurance and all of this. But I noticed that there weren't any books written from the perspective of the renter, which I thought was odd because they're just the people bringing over $500 billion to the table every year to pay the salaries of all of these other people who have books written for them. um, so that's kind of what got the ball rolling as far as writing from that perspective. Um, and then I still didn't know anything about the mechanics of writing a book. Um, but I decided I was going to do it, and understanding about some of the mechanics came later when I attended something called the Small Business Expo. They're an organization. They have events in various cities across the country. And they happened to be in San Francisco because at this point I was living in San Jose, California, which was not too far away. And the day after the expo, they had a kind of a get together kind of show and tell thing for entrepreneurs. And I didn't really know what I was going to experience when I went. But the second guy who got up there said that he was going to have a workshop to teach people how to write a book. And they had never done it before, and they were just going to charge $25 to cover the cost of the room and all of that, and we were going to be his guinea pigs and all of that. I was the second person to the back of the room to sign up for that because it sounded like exactly what I needed. And it turned out to be a really, really good experience. And for those of you out there thinking about writing a book, there are two amazing nuggets of information from that class that I will share with you now. One, have your book cover professionally designed. Everybody says don't judge a book by its cover, but everybody judges books by their cover. Number two, people think that you write a book, you start on page one and you write until you reach the end of the book. And it is not true. Page number one is the introduction. you don't have a book yet. You have nothing to introduce, which makes writing the introduction really, really difficult. Um, so the tip there is to write the middle of the book first, then you can add the introduction and the conclusion. Um, and that's much easier than trying to write the introduction without having anything to introduce.
Very well said, Mr. Justin. Truly, truly empowering for those people who want to write a book. Beyond the transaction, the subtle or the subtitle includes create quality communities. How did your understanding evolve from simply reducing rent to fostering community, and why was the shift essential to the book's message?
Because real estate is very much a relationship business. People aren't just renting a box to live in. This is the foundation for whatever it is they are trying to accomplish. And that can be raising their children, that can be taking a job in a new city, that can be the place that they bring their future wife or husband or partner to. Um, it's not just a box of sheetrock and wood and roofing shingles. Um, it's a place that people actually want to come home to, feel safe and secure in. They're living their life there. They're sharing that life with other people. They're inviting friends over. There's a whole social dynamic that goes on around this apartment or this house that they're renting. And it's also relates to the interplay between neighbors. The quality of your neighbor is going to impact the quality of your rental experience. And as the real estate investor or as the property manager, I'm in charge of making sure that those relationships or the interaction between renters is actually conducive to what everybody in the community is trying to achieve, whether that's raise their children or have friends over or whatever that is. Um, and As an example of that, I was managing an apartment building this was in Campbell, California, in Silicon Valley, basically. Um, and 8 college students moved into the apartment complex. Their apartments were side by side. And at first, it wasn't an issue. But then they started to invite more and more of their friends over. They happened to be on the local community college's soccer team. So they were inviting their teammates over. And they would play soccer in the courtyard. But there were so many of them that they actually took over the courtyards. The other residents couldn't actually use it. Then that spread to them using the swimming pool, them, yeah, there was a security gate that you needed a code to get through. So they would yell their security code down from the balcony to their friends to let them in instead of actually going down to the gate. Um, and th- that behavior detracted from the experience that the other residents were having in the community. So it was fortunately it was serving to decrease the quality that everyone else was experiencing. So as the property manager, I had to kind of manage that process and ultimately entice those 8 students to find somewhere else to live because it was detracting from everyone else's experience. Because while that's going on, I've got people who are working as nurses who have to be up at 5 in the morning to go and do their job and raise their families and their children, and they'd like to use the pool in the courtyard too sometimes. So it's that kind of dynamic that you're managing when you're a property manager, and those situations, and that's just one example.
Give for that example, Mr. Justin. So let's talk about the core philosophy itself. If you had to distill the book's central counterintuitive belief into one sentence, what would it be and why?
Landlords and renters need each other. They're two sides of the same coin. And the reason why that's important is because, I mean, so my great grandfather actually built the house that he raised his children in. Like swung a hammer, nail, built, and every time another child was born, he added a room. Um, the days of people doing that are pretty much long gone. So renters are never going to build their own housing. So they need someone. They need someone to manage that process of general contractors and subcontractors and going through the process of getting permits and acquiring the land and building the structure that they're then going to rent and live in. But at the same time, landlords or real estate investors, renters are literally living in their retirement. That's where a lot of this money that goes into housing is coming from. People are saving in their 401ks, or they're buying rental properties so that they can retire based on the income from that property or the appreciation of that property over time. So that's why I say they need each other, and the relationship between the two groups is extremely important. Um, and I don't think that relationship gets enough attention and focus in the public conversation we're having about housing and affordability. And that conversation is now starting to reach a fever pitch once again, um, across the country. I mean, when you have both sides of the political aisle discussing affordability, you've really hit a topic that's important to everyone.
Definitely, everyone. So let's talk about the most surprising find. Mr. Justin, what was the most unexpected or counterintuitive secret you uncovered during your research that challenged conventional renting wisdom?
People assume that let me back up. People have been trained to have a consumer mentality. And in the environment in the United States, it's very common. You walk into a store, you look on the shelf, there's a price, you pick it up, you go to the cashier, you pay that price. No negotiation, no haggling, none of that. Um, but if you ever go to a flea market and you look at typically it's elderly, um, Asian, Filipino grandmothers who are there at the fruit stand. They are negotiating every single string bean, every single piece of fruit they put in the bag. They are negotiating, and that comes from that old world philosophy of just getting the most value for what you're paying, and that's what they're used to. That's the culture that they're coming from, and we've lost a lot of that because um, one of my favorite quotes is from The Simpsons, where Homer Simpson says, "I don't need to know what I want; the TV will tell me." That's the kind of culture that we're living in right now, where people are just accepting whatever's presented to them and complaining about it, but not actually learning what they can do about it. And so the book is written from that perspective of this is something that you can do about this. When you look at the cost of renting, this is something that you can do about that. And it's based in a it's based it we're using market-based strategies that in and teaching people how to speak the landlord's language and understand their mindset so that the landlord will actually have to listen and take notice of what they're saying. Um, and that's a different conversation than most landlords have. And having been a property manager for 20 years, a lot of these conversations is just people coming in and complaining. Um, but they don't know how to complain effectively. Um, and that's really, and that was what was really surprising was how widespread, like no renter that I have ever met has been able to complain. Well, no, I take that back. There's one renter who I met who knew how to complain effectively. And I tell a story about him, in the book. Um, but that's what was really missing, and it was surprising that it was so prevalent. And that's why the book is written the way it is.
Interesting, Mr. Justin. And thank you for sharing those story. How did you balance hard data or market analysis or legal frameworks with the softer human skills of negotiation and leadership and relationship building in your research and writing?
So when I wrote this book, I realized that, I have to compete for people's attention. And that means you're basically competing with movies that have explosions in them. So you can't get too deep into the technical jargon or the weeds or too many charts and graphs and that kind of thing, because you need to keep people's attention. Um, so I took a lot of what's in the book from my own personal 20 years of experience in property management, um, and weaved those with stories of that either I had experienced or people I knew who had um, experienced those situations. Um, so the book's not really heavy on a lot of charts and graphs and statistics. There are a few in there, um, but it's really more about mindset and shifting people's thinking. Um, and giving people real world stories about how to have these conversations, to kind of put it in the perspective of these are things that average people can do. You don't need to have 20 years of property management experience to have these conversations. Um, and that, I think, is another issue that a lot of people face now, is they think everything's so complicated and technical. And it really isn't. We can boil things down to simple, like, core principles that people can use and apply. And I want so that's where I kind of focused it, because I wanted people to be able to pick it up, read it, and use it. Um, regardless of their background, whether they're an artist or they're in the medical field, or they're, contractor tradesman or a plumber or a cashier or whatever their professional background is. I wanted it to be accessible, because I really want people to be able to weigh in on this national conversation that we're having about housing and affordability and renting and all of that. Because as I look down the road, I see people having to vote on and decide on these topics. Um, so if I can help them be a little more informed by making my book more accessible with less jargon and statistics in it, then that's the path I'm going to take.
Certainly. And thank you for doing that, Mr. Justin. You likely pulled from real estate, psychology, negotiation theory, and urban studies. What is the key of synthesizing these diverse fields into a cohesive, readable guide?
Yeah. So I started looking at it from a perspective of where is the average person? What information do they know? What information do they have? What are they working with? And then kind of looking at from the landlord perspective, what do I why would I listen to this person who's asking for me to accept this deal? Um, and it really comes down to I, as a landlord, have problems. I have marketing problems. I have vacancy problems. I have maintenance problems. I have relationship issues with vendors and tenants and all of this going on. Um, and many real estate investors, especially first time ones, are not prepared for all of that. Like they understand it as a theoretical concept, but to actually be dropped into it and this neighbor is complaining about this one making too much noise and this apartment has been vacant for 3 months because I haven't had time to clean it up and get it ready, or people have been coming to look at it but nobody's actually signed on the dotted line. Like it's different when you're actually dropped into dealing with it. um, so the renter has no concept of any of that. They just know I'm coming to rent an apartment and I want to look at what you have available and sign a lease and it costs too much. Um, so teaching renters to speak the language of landlords and what's important to them and why they do what they do, that's really what shifts people's perspective and makes them much more effective at having that conversation.
Very well said, Mr. Justin. So, is Rental Secrets ultimately more of a tactical toolkit for immediate problems or a mindset shift for a long term living? And how does the book serve both purpose?
It Well, yeah, you're definitely right about that. It is both. Because I think both are needed in order to have an effective conversation and negotiation about renting. So there are definitely some tactical tips in there about like for example, how the landlord comes up with the price for their apartment, and the fact that that pricing really has nothing to do with you because they don't even know you. They haven't met you. They're comparing themselves to who they consider to be their competition. Now, from the renter perspective, their competition is anybody that you would rent from. That's who they're competing against. But they don't have that list. You are the only one who has that list. So, from the renter perspective, tactically, you're going to compile that list and then use that to that's part of what you use to have an intelligent conversation with them. Um, so yeah, there are tactics in there about how to do that. But the mindset shift has to come first. The shift in mindset from the landlord is my enemy who's out to get me and sink my financial ship. If that's the perspective you walk into this situation with, then you're closing yourself off to some of the strategies that you could use to negotiate a lower price. Um, so the mindset shift has to come first. then we can talk about tactics and strategies and all of that. But without the mindset shift, you're basically going to a situation with one hand tied behind your back. Um, so definitely the book addresses the mindset shift first, and then the tactics come next. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you. So, Mr. Justin, now the book is complete. Is there a topic, secret, or a future trend you already begin thinking about? Feels like the seed or for follow up or unwritten final chapter.
Yes. So two of them actually. One is for every apartment, people have to fill out an application. Who I am, what my background is, all of that. And a lot of people don't know, like, what is this information that they're gathering? Why are they gathering it? And how does this information affect whether I'm going to get this apartment or not? So a rental application secrets is going to be a future book. And then another one will be on how to get the most out of the property tour. But yeah, those are books that are definitely in the works.
Like for that, Mr. Justin, and looking forward for more success for those books to come. So can you please invite our listeners to support your rental secrets or anything you want to promote on Abstract Asset?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So your listeners can find me at rentalsecrets.net, and of course the book Rental Secrets is also available on Amazon. And I do also post tips and helpful hints for renters on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Justin Pogue, because if you support him, for sure, more and more rental secrets will rise. So, Mr. Justin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Likewise, Mr. Justin. More people, see you soon.